live.
Thank you for taking out time, guys. Really appreciate you taking out time to discuss out how fintech plays a critical role between the ways we operate and we look at things today. So we seem to have fintech in every part of the world and every part of our lives, not only from the traditional ways of operating, but also from the consumer side of it, also from the private equity side of it, also as old and processing from the payroll side of it. Today, fintech plays a critical role, and we are here with Showman. We're here from Swaminathan, Ivan, Ram, and Gagan. And thank you for taking out time and really, really appreciate you spending some time around it. Love to start with Gagan. Gagan, I'd love to hear you've been a part of various parts of fintech plays, if I may use that word in some ways or the other, between areas. Started with banks, started with classical facility partnerships with Colliers and infrastructure, and today working with a leading luxury partner who visibly leads the entire ecosystem around here. How do you construct consumer equivalence about helping organizations grow? And how do you look at defining the purpose of how finance plays a critical role in the way we want to operate success on it?
Sure. Thanks, Pranav. So when I look back at the career and see where we started off 25 years back on the consumer banking, actually it was the credit cards business and technology, then to where it has transcended to today. I think it's been a massive journey, and I would say it's really been in the last 10-12 years that we have seen, I would say, technology actually becoming more important than a lot of the, I would say the areas that we used to think were so important when we started off our careers. Very quickly, small examples. I know time is a constraint, and this is something you could talk for hours, but I'll try to cover it in minutes, etc. Take a small example of the broking business. Uh, you know, uh, I used to head the broking business at Redigate Securities. It used to be a very people intensive business in the way that the business had been made. Thousands of people, hundreds of branches, and there was the belief that number of people into branches is what is going to keep the revenues and profitability
Flow.
ultimately growing. You do a little bit of deep dive into the business, and that you realize that actually, hey, hang on, I have this whole branch operating out of a center, and there are 10 customers in that branch who actually give the profitability. And then you're carrying these 4,900 customers in that branch who are actually making up the balance 10% in terms of profitability of the branch. How did that come about? A simple thing: data analytics borne out by technology. Now, go back 15, 20 years. I'm sure there were ways to doing it, but it's a lot simpler today, where you have tools, where you have technology, where you have technology playing a part in what are the right drivers that you need to press, and you come to the outcome. Now, very quickly, you can decide that ultimately what is the decision point for you as leadership. The leadership decision point was, how do I protect these 10 customers in a branch to make sure that I made sure that they stayed with us, and I could very well do away with the concept of a branch. Small example. And I move on to currently what we do on the real estate side. And a very real situation. You've been in a pandemic situation for last year and also 3 months of this year, where you couldn't step out of the house. But you saw residential players having one of the best times in the last 10 years. Why
Yeah.
were properties and how were properties being sold? That is because companies decided at that point of time to put in the money in technology to make sure that you had 360 degree visualizations, walk through. Somebody could click on the map and see what are the schools around where I'm buying. what are the grocery shops, what are the supermarkets, what are the malls, and that is just to give a small example. Today, there was a survey done of customers, which happened, I think, about a year back, and there were 37% customers, potential home buyers who were buying a house for the first time, who said that they were going to be very happy with the entire process based on an online system. That means I would not go and actually physically see my house, but I would be happy to execute the transaction sitting at home without stepping out of my house. I think that is how far technology has come and how we can use it. So two small
Lovely.
examples, but I'd love to come back and talk a
Yeah.
little more about some other things.
Shoman, I wanted to pick that up from you. I know you also sit on the board of a couple of large hospitals. How is fintech playing a part in the play of an end customer today, especially from a patient ecosystem, from a hospital B2C standpoint? How is it that you are seeing from a person who looks at the entire peripheral of partnership? How is it in purpose today looking at way forward? Does that help from an analytics standpoint?
Sure, I think if you really look at the technology, one can put it at A, B, C, D. I mean, A standing for AI, B for blockchain, C for cloud, and D for data analytics. So all these four making a huge difference to the
Yeah.
way business was being done yesterday with the pandemic coming in. How things have, almost there was a compulsion. I think there's a huge compulsion, and it is really propelled a tremendous digital transformation across many, many industries. So even in the healthcare, I think because it was like a remote patient monitoring with home care, with telemedicine, with teleconsultation. So there is a way now, there is a much better engagement of the patient with the hospital, which is happening. Much better engagement, which is happening within various kinds of employees, now between doctors, between nurse, between the billing, among the billing section, because a lot of things has to work together. Now the
Yeah.
AI, for example, even like a image processing for any radiologist. Now the AI is tremendously helping in terms of the analytics driven image processing. So all these things have an impact, but I think the blockchain particularly is helping in terms of reducing fraud, some waste, and some kind of abuse, potential abuse, which could have been possible. Similarly, if you see the supply chain, there is a huge improvement in terms of, ensuring that there is better efficiency, no stockouts, and the much better transparency. Even when there was a specific, for COVID care, specific medicines, which in the first wave in India, that was available. But when the second wave came, the availability was not there, simply because the manufacturers, the pharmaceutical company which produced it, a lot of inventories were written off between the two waves. And government never actually guaranteed that time that they wanted to stock and keep it. But it takes time to again, bring up manufacturing. Now, during this time, both the collaboration and the technology helped tremendously in terms of understanding the actual position of manufacturing in different plants, availability in different states and hospitals, and how government can ensure it is available to the wider cross section of people. And some people in the entire chain wanted to take advantage in terms of doing kind of a unnecessary hoarding and charging extra. So those also could be prevented because of better use of technology. I think had this technology not there, maybe the response to the entire COVID would have been quite different. But in a way, also COVID has helped in adopting things very, very fast. I think companies who were a little laggard earlier, they have really caught up tremendously during this time.
Yeah, yeah. Ivan, I'm going to pick this conversation up with you and really bring out how technology has really looked at. I know you traditionally run a pure pledge, a fund which consolidates a lot of growth aspects between various perspectives and run multi-million dollar ecosystems. The premise of me asking you this, taking from what Gagan said and how technology has played a leveraging portfolio, how Soman says that, hey, technology has really brought in control on leakages and brought in more higher productivity. From a potential fund management standpoint, where have you seen consistent change, keeping in mind that, end of the day, the transaction needs to be sacrosanct? How have you used technology? And I mean, in that sense, technology not only from a B2B standpoint, but also as core value of what technology stands for. How has that been used within Chicago Global, as well as how you have seen and what works and what doesn't work?
Yeah. It's been a very interesting journey, because when I started this firm about 5 years ago, we set up focusing on fixing some of the problems that we were experiencing firsthand. So it was very much technology first approach, but we didn't think about purpose too much. It was mainly an engineering problem. So the world was moving much faster. You have a lot more companies, a lot more businesses. There's just so much information, and people were still using spreadsheets to analyze companies. And so the proportion of the investable universe they could handle kept getting smaller and smaller as the amount of information exploded and became very expensive. And they would have their best people do the same thing over and over. So the analyst, you may have the best analyst in a given sector. He has to sit and listen to management's conference call every quarter, update his spreadsheet, and so on and so forth. So our focus initially was fixing this and treating it as an information problem with information technology, as opposed to the usual focus on accounting and finance and so on. And once you do that and you automate it, then you can have your best people, instead of doing the same thing over and over every quarter, you can solve a problem, move on, and tackle the next problem. So this way, your best people tend to work on the hardest problems. So once you do that, you really can embrace the complexity that is so characteristic of the world today. And so we analyze 50,000 companies using millions of data points and so on and so forth. So that is a big challenge, but it's once you do that, then you can start to actually tackle some of the fundamental problems around purpose, and values-based investing is very important now. So this covers things like ESG, which has come to the fore, as well as the sector of Islamic finance. And so within ESG, there's been a lot of proliferation of new products. We've been able to take a very data-driven approach and take apart completely the way most managers are doing it. And so we have our own ratings, and fundamentally, we can rank every company in the world on several dimensions, and we have some that's transparent and also much more closely aligned with the values of our investors.
Yeah. So, Ram, I'm going to pick you and Swami next with the objective of understanding that how you're trying to change the entire undercurrent of the financial institutions and changing it via moving into a banking perspective, not only via digital, but also via the ecosystems that cut across consumer impact. So, Ram, would you want to have a quick perspective on that?
Sure. In terms of, where I live, I'm in Singapore, and when we step out, virtually everything is digital here. Cash is not used at all, very rarely, if at all. So from that, on the one end of the spectrum to the other end, where the lower half of the pyramid in India, where cash is still king in the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 towns and villages. That is where our current Connect Pay, which is our payments vertical, operates. We enable cash to bank and cash withdrawal facilities at the curb. So the banking functions of cash deposit and cash withdrawal, we extended right up to an ordinary shop in a village can be a bank's front desk, if I may. So bank's counter, if I may. So that's what we enable on the Connect Pay side. On the Credit Sutra side, again, from an inclusion standpoint, we enable digital mechanisms to deliver loans to SMEs, which is a seriously underserved section, because the big boys in banking limit themselves to certain criteria and category of borrowers, and we are having a massive opportunity out there in terms of including them in the low credit facility zone, if I may. And those are the two areas where we enable both use technology to include better inclusion in the villages, enabling them with banking facilities, and on the SME side, enabling them with better lending facilities. All of this delivered digitally.
Yeah, interesting. Sami, you want to have a conversation? I know you've just joined the team. It'll be interesting to hear from you what the perspectives of building an impact while still controlling purpose is a critical ingredient, keeping in mind that we have family offices also looking at some of these things, both for identification of innovation as well as growth. I'm just curious to understand from you that what got you to move from making this jump, and what has been your story around it?
Yeah, hi. With respect to this particular fintech space, and just I will give you a background before what is that taking it up to the fintech space. I work with some of the companies, banks like ICICI Bank and Tata Capital kind of companies. And why am I mentioning this particular point? Tata Capital, those days when I was with them from 15, 20 years back, it was into brick and mortar concept. So the thing is, everything used to happen via paper. So we need to have, as mentioned earlier, we need to have branches right across all the locations. We need to have manpower, and everything is it's people driven. There is no specific systems with which we'll be able to know what is happening at a branch level, unless otherwise there is a report comes from them, and most of the reports will be in the form of Excel spreadsheets only will come. So over a period of time during 2013-14 time, when I stepped into the fintech space, everything is different in the sense that still it was a hybrid model. I can't say it's completely fintech, it's a hybrid model. And the acceptance level at customer level, it was too low because customers got used to one kind of approach by giving the set of papers to a mediator, and they will just leave it, everything will be handled by mediator. But when it comes to fintech, it will be with the end customer. We'll be dealing directly with him via digital documents, and there will be some software through which we'll be able to pull the details. Actually, in what way it helps is when the fintech steps in, banks started seeing fintech as a competition, but rather it's a win-win situation. It both complements each other because fintechs need capital, which will be satisfied by bank, and banks need the book in the unreached locations, which will be satisfied by fintechs because fintechs has more reach because of the digital platforms. And the co-lending model, that's the model which helped the banks also to build the book, because the banks also have a targets from RBI in terms of priority sectors where banks won't be able to go to the deeper pockets because of the operating expenses. Rather, these fintechs were able to satisfy those needs, and because of the co-lending, the capital is also getting addressed as well as the bank is also getting benefited. From the customer perspective, the more important thing is the transparency. Earlier, when I am a customer, when I'm giving the document, I don't know where my document is, which all the financials has been logged in with. But being a fintech, the customer, he himself has to fill the details in the platform. So he knows where exactly it goes. And the document, this one also, privacy is also taken care because it will be directly between the customer and the lender. There is no intermediary where they are trying to take advantage of their document, copying of the documents and spreading the customer personal details with other people. So these
I'm going to pick up, Swami, just to cut you short, I'm going to pick up a piece of conversation in lieu of time, just to pick up one change which you guys have seen, Gagan, I'd love to hear from you that, one thing which you saw was a trigger point of making a change and really impacted people's lives, both customer as well as internal companies. So, is there a moment which you kind of resonate while making transformations and keeping purpose in mind, where you said that, hey, you know what, that changed and that kind of gave a visible difference of the way business is done? It could happen under your piece or industry wide. Was there something that you remember and say this is something that made an impact in all our lives?
See, if I go back, I think, and not just picking on something that I could have done, I'll briefly touch upon something like that too. But I think there have, looking at, across the sectors that have been associated with banking, we remember the tedious process that account opening used to be, and we look at
Yeah.
what has happened today. You don't need to step out of your house to open an account. You do the fulfillment pretty much online. I think that is where we've come. And I think from the days that you would set up a meeting, somebody would contact you. You would be signing original seen and verified papers. The process could go last into weeks to where today you can have an account opened in less than 5 minutes. There are still some people who are able to close it at that stage. There's still some people who still require some follow up, signatures in the physical form, etc. But I think that is one example of how much the journey has transformed. There are several more journeys. Today look at it. While I won't say this is totally true for the business that I'm in the capital markets business, where you're dealing with large transactions, and while you can use drone technologies and 360-degree walkarounds, etc., where somebody sitting in Singapore or Hong Kong can actually decide, okay, this is a building that I want to buy, but their IC still require that somebody has to be on the ground to actually walk through the asset, physically see it for themselves, feel the quality, etc. But I'm sure there is going to be a workaround for that also coming through soon. But today, if I were a residential home buyer, again, the technology that allowed me to sit at my home, figure out, what is my the apartment that I'm looking at, what does each room look like? Sitting in one part of the room, what does the rest of the house look like? Where is my flat relative to the building, to relative to the complex, relative to the common areas? I think go back even 6-7 years back, and some of these were unthinkable. So two small examples, but big changes in the way we do our business.
Yeah. Also, I think that what you're saying also brings across a very clear augmentation of cross segment increase of the segment itself, because there will be some people who would not buy commercial because of these reasons and say that this is something that I'm not aware of and I don't know about it. But when you consolidate data around what people of your same genre are doing, and you can come out with reports and augmentation of buying behavior, it kind of brings out a possibility of an increase of the kind of people who are getting into that transaction. Shoman, do you think that within the healthcare space, when you look at the transition of new structures, new processes, new ecosystems, within the play of physical infrastructure, do you think there is a consistent change of the way a consumer or a patient today is referring to the way fintech has to approach? Of course, there is the entire insure tech, which is which is a very clear part of the healthcare insure plus a physical hospital partner ecosystem. But within a customer as well, how easy it's become for your insurance claims back, cashless policies, and so on and so forth. How long do you think this will take to make much more seamless so that even the bottom?
Hello.
Pranav, we lost you.
Pranav, we lost you.
Yeah, come to a perspective.
Yeah. So we lost you for a few seconds, but maybe I will pick up whatever I heard and respond. But before going to customer, let me give you an experience in Dr. Reddy's. Before even we heard about all these platforms and the benefit of platforms, we started an initiative called Bikreta Connect. Now, Bikreta was basically for all the business partners. The whole idea was
Right.
there that can we bring in more transparency and data visibility among all the business partners, right from a request for quotation for them to submit a bid, getting selected, even if they are regularly supplying to us the status of the quality control test, acceptance, status of their invoice, and when the invoice is due, when they can expect the payment. All these things we seamlessly put it in a portal. We call it Vikreta Connect. So when
Correct.
we heard about platforms, then suddenly it struck us that a lot of banks, they come to us and request for the list of all the suppliers, and then they tell us to stand as a guarantee for them to extend a working capital loan. So I then thought as a CFO that since they are our business partners, anyway we'll have to pay them on a particular date. Can we just simply make one small offerings in the same portal saying that if you need money urgently, instead of waiting for your due date, you are supposed to get in November, but today in September, if you want this payment, how much can you get after a bill discount? And if you do it in a click of a button, you see. And then if you opt for it, end of the day, this is in your bank account. We
Lovely.
simply introduced that, and it became a tremendous hit. So many business partners, they availed it. To the extent, some of the bankers came to me and they're saying, "What are you doing? You are actually, is creating problem for us in terms of acquiring more customers." But I said, I just simply extended the benefit because of the platform that we had in engaging with our
Yeah.
business partners. So I think the
Yeah.
more platforms that we have for customer connect, which we are having
Yeah.
for our B2B as well as for B2C, or for even for internal processes, whether for selection to launch or on many other things, we are today really putting the digital transformation, putting various platforms. There is an endless opportunity of having those connectivity and data assets as an ecosystem to take complete leverage. And
Yeah.
that will be the next step of evolution which is going to happen in terms of extending the benefit of all this fintech
Yeah.
technology to people within and beyond the industry. Sometimes
No, in fact, we have an investment in a firm called Value IQ, which works very closely with enterprise people. It really becomes, it's not a staffing company, but really becomes a partner of payroll disbursement. But what that does for payroll disbursement is that we are able to aggregate the potential value to the employee in a much more larger perspective than the unit company itself, because the unit company does it for itself, but we have 100 such companies who run through us. So our ability to aggregate services, partnerships, value, benefit, insurances, healthcare, in fact, leads to employee salary becoming larger. So his ability to purchase becomes larger. While on the other side, the employer, we can give him a cash back on the money that he reduces his salary quotient, the employee salary becomes higher, and the delta is the impact that gets generated. I want to take that up for Ram on potential how Credit Sutra is working on early salary and the potential partnerships with us. How do you see that play an important role in today's customer partnerships to make an impact from a purpose-led ecosystem?
Excellent. What Shauman mentioned was absolutely fantastic. I mean, Shauman, I like that idea. I'm going to pursue that. So, in terms of using bill discounting in that supplier buyer relationship, that is great. And in terms of payday loans and the opportunities there, yes, any relationship that currently exists in the market, where there is some amount of money being transferred and there is a timeline associated with it, we can insert a point of sale, a point of transaction loan mechanism. And that is a massive opportunity. And there are many, many such areas. Salman, you added one to that list of ours. Thank you. And huge opportunity there to digitally deliver at the point of transaction and at the point of sale, slip in the partial or full amount loans that can be paid later. So I'll let Swaminathan has massive experience in this space, so I'll let him add to it.
Yeah. So Ivan, just a quick one around it. What are the top industry verticals you are currently seeing within the fintech space, which are scaling up, which are new categories apart from the entire cryptocurrency side of it? What are the areas which are making an interest to build value and your interest in that sense?
Yeah, so crypto is obviously very high profile, but there is a lot of things going under the surface. And your prior question, just to go back about specific moments that are turning points, to me, various crises, the financial crises, they in hindsight emerge as very pivotal points because they challenge people's assumptions. For instance, the ability to work from home has been around for 20 years, but was deemed unacceptable. You cannot be serious if you're standing at home working in slippers. And it turns out that people can actually be very, very serious working in slippers, and they are able to be much more productive if they don't spend all the time they have to travel and so on. The legal framework in asset management is based on the blueprint from the US, which was designed in the 1920s and 1940s. And the Fund Act was signed by President Roosevelt after the Great Depression. And it's because the US asset management system was so successful in the following decades, everyone copied it. So we have regulations and legal structures that are from the past century. And so once as I mentioned, we focused on the technology aspect and the making investing more efficient. But once you have the technology in place, and then you look at all the data you have, and you can become much more granular about your customers' values, investment preferences, time horizon, and you can design portfolios. So everyone is going to have a bespoke portfolio. It will be so common that it won't be called bespoke. It will be a joke to think that these one-fit-all portfolios that we're so used to now are actually going to look like artifacts from the past in 20 years. So that's the big trend that is very pervasive, and it connects to payments. As you know, we're working with Kuvera and Amazon Pay on their entry into the wealth management market in India, and that's something that's going to happen all over the world. India is a great testing ground for this because there are a lot of customers. You can try out different things, and but there is similar experiments going on in all markets, and they're pushing against the traditional setup, both from a legal and regulatory perspective.
Lovely, lovely. For the code of time, I think I'm going to wrap this up and have a quick one word kind of an ecosystem of saying that what does change mean to you, and what is change really reflective? One word for change when you hear that word. Gagan?
I think change, as it says, is every morning you wake up not knowing what's going to be happening, and I think that's a constant. And as long as you feel good about it, you're not going to go wrong.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. So when?
One word is adapting.
Erupting. Lovely, lovely. Ram?
I'd like to say inclusion. To see more of it.
Ivan?
I would say change, you cannot predict what will happen, but you have to prepare, and that's what matters.
Yeah. Sami?
Change is something which is unpredictable but has to be acceptable.
So I see all of us talking about making sure that it's erupted, but it's still augmented towards being prepared and wake up every morning to make sure things are in place. Thank you so much, guys, for coming in. Really, really appreciate you taking out time and sharing experiences. Really, really happy to have you in. And thank you so much again. Appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you.
you.